Hi, I'm Keith Wyatt, and I'd like to welcome you to this video. Today we're going to talk about blues, but specifically blues from the standpoint of a rock guitar player. Probably like yourself, I started out playing rock. That's what got me into the guitar, listening to bands like the Stones, Cream, Hendrix, and then later on I got turned on to the blues. I started reading about the guys that influenced Eric Clapton and Hendrix. And I found myself ultimately, instead of going forward and listening to all the new guitar players that came out every year, I was going backwards. And I started listening to B.B. King, Albert King, Freddie King, Albert Collins, all the famous names of the blues. And I found that in the process, it wasn't that I lost my rock guitar style. I really felt that I added to it. I built a stronger foundation. And that's what I want to bring to you today. Now, you're looking at this tape because you're interested in the blues. And if you're a rock guitar player, chances are your background is a lot like mine. You learn some scales, you learn some of the typical chord progressions, but when it came to blues, you might have had trouble trying to figure out how blues players phrase. How do they choose the notes that they choose? How do they play over the chords in the way that they play? So that's the subject we're going to crack open today. And you got to think of it, it's like learning a new language, and it takes a while. You have to immerse yourself in it. You have to live in that country for a while, and you have to listen to the records. It doesn't come overnight. So even at the end of this tape, if you learn every lick I show you, you still got a ways to go. But you're going to be well on your way, and the things that I'm going to show you, I think you'll find will hold up over time and give you a good head start into the style. Okay, I'm going to tune you up right now. I'm going to play my high E string for you first. So tune your guitar to this note. Now if you have to, stop the tape, tune up, turn the tape back on again to hear the note, and then I'll play the rest of the strings for you as well. Here's my B string, B string, D, A, and low E. Okay, now when you're tuned up, we'll get started. All right, first thing I'm going to talk to you about is rhythm playing. That's the foundation, of course, of any style of music, is understanding how the rhythm patterns work. Now in blues, as in any other style, you got three considerations. There's melody, harmony, and rhythm, and we'll deal with those to some degree separately. But first thing you got to understand, and I think you already do, is that blues is based on the shuffle. The shuffle is a style of rhythm that's really built off the triplet. If you play a steady beat, 1, 2, 3, 4, you get three, right? Three notes within each beat. And what we do in a shuffle is we play the first and the last part of each triplet. So you get triplet, 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 shuffle, shuffle, shuffle. It's like somebody shuffling down the street with a broken leg or something. What I'm going to show you is 4 ways to play rhythm on a medium shuffle in the key of E. Most rock guitar players, when it comes to blues, know one rhythm pattern, and it's kind of limiting. That's why rock guitar players tend to think that playing blues is boring sometimes, because you're standing up there playing rhythm and you play your one lick and you run out of ideas, and it is boring. But if you know how to build a rhythm part and how to think of textures when playing rhythm, you can make it not only interesting, but you might find you have more fun playing rhythm sometimes than you do playing lead. So what I'm going to show you right now is 4 ways to approach a medium shuffle in E. Okay, we're going to talk first about a style of rhythm playing that, as I said, most rock guitar players learn right off the bat, but there are a couple of subtleties about playing any type of rhythm in blues that you have to be aware of, and I'm going to show them to you right now. First thing you do, all right, you go down low and you grab that little shape right down there, which is a form of an E chord. All right, so the basic pattern then is bouncing with the left hand, digging in hard with the right hand, take a bite out of it, and accent the downbeats. All right, so I'm going 1 and 2 and 3. A little harder on the downbeats than on the upbeats. Okay, now to make out the full pattern in my left hand, what I'm going to do is add one more note, C sharp on the 5th string at the 4th fret there. All right, now when we get the pattern rolling, Then I'll put in the occasional upstroke to give it an accent. Right, and I apply the pressure with my left hand, and that gives the rhythm a little bit of shape. Makes it feel kind of funky. Now I can go further, start adding in the bass notes. Right? Now ideally I could double the bass line if I know exactly what the bass player is going to play. That's not always the case, especially in blues. Everybody tends to kind of make it up as they go along. But I can get pretty close, right? Now when I switch from E to A, same pattern. And then B, here's the only trick, is I play the B chord, a regular bar chord at the 2nd fret there, and then, all right, now that's the trick, is I have to shift position almost instantly. Play the bar chord, and then come up into the 4th position via my 2nd finger. Right, see my 2nd finger lands at the 5th fret, and then I keep playing the pattern. Right, that's one a lot of guys have trouble with, because making that snap is a tough thing to do to get it clean, but it just takes a little bit of work. All right, tell you what, I'm going to tell the drummer Roland to count this thing off. He tends to be a little hyperactive sometimes. We'll see if he does a fill into this thing. That'll give us the count off, and then we're going to play rhythm for 2 times through the 12 bar using that exact style of rhythm playing. Okay, you ready? Here we go. Here's another very common rhythm pattern. Sounds great with this style at about this tempo. And this is one that you'll hear a lot of modern blues players play. And it's been around, actually this style's been around since the late 30s, early 40s. It's based on the boogie-woogie piano style. Now this particular chord I'm going to show you might not be one that you're familiar with. It's a great one. I use this all the time. This is a 13th chord, E13. Right, that sounds kind of funny when you take the bass out of it. Here's E in the bass. That sounds like a jazz chord, but when we put it into the context with the rhythm section, it'll sound real cool. All right, there's our E chord. Now we're going to go to an A chord. Our 4 chord is going to be a 9th chord, but a different shape. That's A dominant 9. Okay, and then for our 5 chord, use exactly the same shape, up 2 frets. Let me show it to you. Okay, we're going to roll the same rhythm pattern, and I'm going to play that rhythm feel and show you how the timing works. Okay, here we go. Here's one you might have heard. This is one that Stevie Ray Vaughan has used. And this style of rhythm playing you can date back to at least Jimmy Reed and Eddie Taylor, who played on a lot of Jimmy Reed records. And it's basically another version of the Boogie Woogie, but it's a little bit more built up sounding. Okay, now I'll play a little bit of it for you by myself, and then do it with a rhythm track. It sounds like this. You don't need a band. Right? Now what I'm doing is taking the first two patterns we learned and putting them together. I've got, which we already learned, and I've got a version of the upbeat style that we already learned. Here's the idea. You're playing a bass line in your left hand. Right? Now notice in my right hand, I'm not playing tight like this. I'm swinging it from the elbow as I was doing before. Right? And now when I just play the bass, I'm using all downstrokes. Now you notice one other thing, that I can hit all 6 strings, really smacking them, but only one note comes out. And that's in the left hand. That's your left hand's job, is to trim down the number of notes that you're hearing so that you only get the one bass note that you want to sound at any given time. All right, so when I play the E chord, I'm hearing the same sound that we heard originally. But when I play the first bass note at the 4th fret, what I'm doing is deliberately playing sloppy. I'm letting my left hand just lay all across the strings, which you're not supposed to do, right? Lay across the strings and deaden everything, so if I play it slowly, the only pressure that I'm putting down is with the tip of my 3rd finger. Next bass note, same thing. My index finger lays flat across the strings, except I'm only applying pressure with the tip. And then 3rd finger. Now notice my thumb's over the top. That's my insurance policy against the 6th string ringing out. And then I get on the 4th string, same thing. My index finger is pressing down the 4th string and laying across everything else. Right? So that takes a little time. All right, now the other half of that is the upstroke. So what I do is hit the bass note and then hit the open top 2 strings. But I'm not being so picky about the top 2. I'm just kind of coming up with the pick. So I hit all 6 on the way down and then hit them all on the way up. And the fact is, you hear the upstroke so briefly that it really doesn't matter if you've got a couple extra notes ringing out there. So it sounds like this when you put them together slowly. Now when you get to the 5 chord, it's going to sound like this. When you play it slowly, it sounds like a bunch of garbage cans rolling down the street, but pick up the tempo, it sounds great. Okay, we're going to play it with the rhythm track now, and I'll show you how it goes. Now one more style of rhythm playing, we'll put it all together. This is another style that's been around for a long time. T-Bone Walker was an excellent comper in this style. Think of it as being a one-man horn section. Here's one I'm going to play right here. This is an E dominant 9 chord, another one that maybe a lot of people don't play, but once you learn it, I think you'll use it a lot. Right? Put the E in the bass and you can hear the tonality. Okay? And then for a 4 chord, we'll use A9 at the 12th fret. We've already learned this shape. And for a 5 chord, B at the 14th fret. Okay? All right, in this section, we're going to talk about the fun stuff. Let's face it, licks, right? Especially licks in E. Now, as a rock guitar player, I started out playing in E. I always thought E was like home, you know. I mean, it's the most fun key to play in because you get to play all up and down the neck. So I'm going to show you some licks in E, and then we're going to talk about the real heart of how to make a blues solo work, which is how do you get from E to A, and from E to B, and from B to A, and all the other stuff. In other words, think about chords a little bit more. Now, most rock guitar players grow up and become very strong in scales, and so naturally when you think of a new style of music, you start thinking about, well, what scale do you play? Well, in blues, it's pretty straight up, you know, it's the blues scale. Not much to say about that. Key of E, if I'm playing in open position, I would play this scale right here. Now, of course, scales are only part of the picture, but let's start out with the blues scale because, like anything else that has become a system, it works. Now, it only works up to a point, but it does a lot with a little bit. So if you know that particular scale pattern, you can cover a lot of ground. Here's a lick built out of the blues scale, for instance. All right, all in open position. Let me play that slowly for you. Now, like any blues type phrase, a little bit more than meets the ear. If you just looked at the notes on the page or even watched me play it, you might say, well, okay, G, right? But there's that little extra, it's that little half bend. Now, part of the way that I phrase when I think about what to play is knowing the relationship of the notes of the scale to the chord. I'm playing over an E chord, right? And I know that an E chord, like any other major chords, made up of 3 notes, the root, the third, and the fifth, right? So I look at that note, and I think of its relationship to E. Well, what is it? What's the minor third? Now, when you hear blues players play the minor third, almost all the time, they don't just play the minor third, they actually play a note that's halfway between the minor third and the major third, and it sounds like this. Right? Now, it's something you don't even really notice, but if you don't do it, it doesn't sound right. All right, so that's the first thing I'm doing is bending that note, not even a half step, but half a half step. And then I'm doing a pull off. That's a very common move right there. It's a hammer on, and then a double pull off, and then landing on the E. All right, now folding my second finger over there, going back and forth, that's another common move. So actually this lick incorporates a lot of the typical little technical things you run into in blues. Once again, up to speed. All right. Let me show you another lick in open position using the blues scale. It goes from high to low. Here's how it goes. Woo! Always got to end it with that. All right. Makes it sound impressive. All right, now the way that lick works starts with a typical move, sliding up from 2nd to 4th string, and then using the open E string on top. All right, that's taking advantage of the open strings, of course. Typical move in blues is to pick the note and then slide it. Gives a little bit more something, a little zing. All right, now there, I fold my second finger over, hammer on that E, or not the E, but the G sharp, the third of the E chord. And now, kind of take an odd root down to the low end. Right? That's using all the notes of the blues scale right there, from the open A, right, up to the B. Tweak that note a little bit, and then land on the E again. Okay, here's another phrase. This is something I kind of made up out of some other people's licks, as most people do. You know, you hear somebody play it and you twist it around and make it your own. Sounds like this. Right? Now, what's different about that is I don't start in open position. I start with my index finger on the 3rd fret of the 1st string and pull off, and then 2nd string, a double pull off from 5th to 3rd to open string. and then land on the third string at the fourth fret, the same note that I just played. So I double it, and then pull off again, and now move my hand into the open position. Right, so, and land on the 7th degree of the chord. Right. Okay, here's another phrase. Now this is one that I use that almost requires the use of the pick and the fingers in the right hand. Very important to get them both because I'm going to jump position a lot. Let me show it to you first. Right, now what I did there slowly so you can hear it. Right. Here's a shot of my right hand so you can see how I'm using the combination of pick and fingers. I'll start with the pick. Pick the low string, second finger, third finger, low string again, second finger to pick the high note, all pick, second finger, and so. Now if you want to move up the neck, we all know about the 12th position, and you could actually take these licks that I just showed you and translate them into 12th position. For instance, let's see, let me pick one of the ones. Right? Almost the same. I changed it slightly, but almost the identical lick. So you could take that same phrase and move it up, and every lick that you know down here, you can play up here. All right. Now you probably already know a bunch of licks up in 12th position, so I don't need to push that too much. But one area that sometimes you need a little help in is how to connect the high and the low. Okay. The first place to go is 7th position. Now what we're doing here is playing off of familiar chord shapes: the open E chord, E bar chord, and of course here's E right in the middle. So when you construct a lick, you're building it really, whether you know it or not, off the shape of a chord. That's what makes it sound good. All right. So if I play in 7th position, I've got my blues scale, which is right, or descending. Right. Now those are the available notes. Like any scale, you don't play them all in a row, but that's what's there. Now I could make up some licks out of that scale pattern too. Let me show you one. Okay, now I did shift position there in order to get down to the low notes, and I'll show you how I did that. See, I'm playing out of that. So there's one phrase. Now other typical phrases, you can make up a million of them once you get rolling, but right? Now there what I'm doing, a real common sound, is to play two strings at once, E and G, and bend that G slightly. So I get my second finger on the G. I don't bend the B, but right? And then basically I'm just messing around the blues scale for the rest of it, right? So, right, just playing around the blues scale in 7th position. All right. Now what I'd like to do is play along with the rhythm track, and I'm going to play a solo first in open position, and then I'm going to start in open position, work my way up to 7th position, and wind up in 12th position. In other words, build the solo over the period of 2 choruses so that I start low, end high.